what environment today is different that's allowing, medieval diseases to crop up?
Right. Well, because of all the tents and all the people that are now on the streets as a result, they're eating on the streets. You got homeless people with the best of intention donating food. When you're feeding them in the streets, they're eating what they want, and the rest they don't want, they throw into the street, where it attracts rats and roaches. And unfortunately, the rats are now carrying these flea-borne diseases called typhus.
Well, typhus, it was teed up right there. And there was some outstanding reporting by Fox Business correspondent Hillary Vaughn with LAPD senior lead officer Dion Joseph back in March. Now an LAPD officer has actually contracted a contagious bacteria which causes typhoid fever. And a second LAPD officer had typhoid-like symptoms. LAPD's Central Division is in the heart of Skid Row in downtown LA. And tonight, it appears the latest troubles are coming from inside the building. It's a shocking story, and we want to talk about it with Fox News contributor James Green and Republican National Lawyers Association board member Harmeet Dhillon. We normally see her out in California. She's in Washington tonight. Good to see you both.
Happy to be here, Ed.
Harmeet, let's start with you. You're in California a lot. What in the world is going on out there?
It is a crisis situation in our cities in California, with a combination of the Ninth Circuit telling cities that they can't move people along and it's okay to live on the streets as a civil right, combined with feckless politicians who don't want to at least try to balance or contain this problem. Now, LAPD officers have been issued heavier gloves to try to deal with the situation of them having to come into contact with this human waste and diseases, but clearly it isn't enough. Now we have this problem inside the building, and there's apparently a third detective who may also be suffering these symptoms. And we're looking at potentially plague, contagion, communicable diseases that's going to affect the population as a whole. It's a huge problem.
Jamu, these are the police officers who, it's not their job to clean up the streets. We've heard these stories about excrement and other things out there. They're out there to police the streets, literally, to keep all of us safe, and yet they themselves are now getting sick.
Yeah, and I mean, God bless our law enforcement who put themselves out there on the front lines every single day. Here's my reality, Ed. I think each of us has a choice. We can choose to look at the homelessness crisis from a place of compassion, or you can choose to look at the homeless with contempt. I choose compassion. And what does that mean? That means starting by understanding that our homelessness crisis in this country starts from the lack of affordable housing. And the second reason is domestic violence. Who are the homeless? They're single mothers, the children of these single mothers. They're veterans. And so we need to find ways of innovating on prevention, on rapid rehousing, and really try to find how to address this problem. It's not something that's just facing LA, but look, congrats to LA, because their homelessness numbers have actually decreased, and the biggest decrease has come with veterans, and I think that's something that we can all celebrate.
And Jamu, you are absolutely putting your finger on some important issues, particularly with veterans, the homeless issue in general. But critics, as you know, of the Democratic officials in Los Angeles have been calling them out for their policies. This is an article we saw in the New American from May 27th. It says, sky-high piles of trash are making downtown L.A. unlivable. Unfortunately, leftist Mayor Garcetti and the leftist city council lack the will or intestinal fortitude for such actions. Their so-called compassion for the homeless prevents any true solution to the problem. Perhaps the waste problem in LA is a bit of poetic justice. After all, the town's movie industry has been polluting the culture for decades. Maybe the culture is simply responding in kind. Harmeet?
That's a lot of hyperbole, Ed. I mean, that's an interesting aspect to look at it. But to Jamu's point, I'm sorry, Jamu, there is nothing compassionate about allowing people to live in squalid medieval conditions on our streets. That's absurd. And as to the housing issue and what you describe as the homeless, I actually walk down the streets in San Francisco every single day. I walk to work, and it is not the kind of people you're describing. It isn't, Les Miserables living out on the street. It is actually people who are mentally ill, using drugs on the street, shooting up. And the reason that we have a housing shortage in California is because of the Democrats running California. So these simplistic answers are not the answer. But listen, the politicians have a duty to all the Americans who live in these cities, not just the homeless, but everybody. And these diseases are going to actually start killing people. So this is no joke. This is not some kind of a liberal utopian experiment we should be doing with our people.
It's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine for you to go down the road of personal attacks. But the reality is, affordable housing is a crisis in this country. What I would like to see is expertise dealing with this. It's shocking that the Secretary of Housing, the leader of HUD, who is supposed to understand affordable housing issues, has no expertise on this at all. So politicians are responsible for dealing with this issue. It should not be politicized where you're pointing fingers at Democrats.
Talk about
There's a lot of blame
attacks.
to go around.
Unbelievable.
But let's start from a place of compassion and the mental health issue that was brought up.
Right.
Yes,
which is
course,
important.
People with mental health should be met with compassion. And if that is why they are homeless, then we need innovative solutions.
Harmeet, you wanted to get in there. I'm going to give you.
My final point is that we have 3 million illegal aliens in California. If we didn't have those, we might have a little bit more housing available for the citizens.
Wow. The immigrant is to blame.
I'm an immigrant, Jammu.
Wrong.
So there.
Wrong.
All right.
I'm a first-generation American. My parents immigrated here.
Okay.
I'm a proud first-generation American,
Absolutely.
but I'm not going to blame every one of our country's ills on immigrant communities.
Big problem.
That's despicable.
Something everyone needs to come together on. We appreciate it, Jammu. Harmeet, thanks for coming in.
My pleasure.
One of the most celebrated actresses takes on the liberal